We recently lost Zoleka Mandela at the age of 43. She'd been battling with breast cancer and it spread to her liver and her lungs. She passed on. She'd struggled with drug and alcohol abuse and addiction. She was sexually abused as a child. She lost two children, one of them being Zenani Mandela. I think she was 10 years old when she passed on, very young in a car accident, which was caused by a drunk driver. The mother wasn't even there because she was in hospital with attempted suicide. Really, really tragic story. She wrote a book, When Hope Whispers, which has inspired a lot of people. And she's a Mandela legacy child, the granddaughter of the late icon, Nelson Mandela, her grandmother being Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, who has just had a huge road in Johannesburg named after William Nicol Road. It was William Nicol, it is now called Winnie Mandela Road, or Drive, rather. There was drama at her funeral, at her burial, at the Fourways Memorial burial site in Fourways in Johannesburg, where her aunt, Zenani, the sister of Uzinzi, her mother, came with the police, came with a court interdict to exhume her body from the burial site. I think Winnie Madikizela-Mandela had bought 4 burial sites. She had been buried in one. Zenani, Zoleka's daughter, had been buried in another one. I'm not sure if the other child was buried in the third. And then this fourth one was for Zoleka. And I'm not sure if Zenani, the aunt, not the daughter, wanted to be buried there, or what the plans were there. I can imagine the chaos and the drama, and it has sparked a lot of conversations on Twitter and other social media platforms. Part of them being the fact that Zoleka Mandela's ex-husband, Thierry Bashala, had actually paid for a burial site for Zoleka. And people are saying she was married. And as far as we are concerned, she belongs to the husband's family now because she was passed over. And she should go and get buried there. Other people saying, yeah, but Zenani herself got married to Wadlamini. Why is she interfering with Mandela things? Winnie herself, who got divorced, I'd like to think, from Nelson Mandela, is not buried next to her ex-husband being Nelson Mandela in Qunu, in the Eastern Cape. So the conversations around what's culturally appropriate, what is correct, what Zenani did, was it dramatic, was it unnecessary? Zoleka Mandela had actually written a list of all the people she didn't want to see at her burial. One of them being her ex-husband, Thierry Bashala, another one being her aunt, Zenani Mandela, another one being Mandela, who has been a member of parliament and one of the leaders of the Mandela clan, who has spoken out now and said, look, this just looks really, really bad for the family, and we'd like to actually have some type of decorum in terms of what's happening. Even the king of I think Abatembu, if I'm not mistaken, written a long list. You can probably go find it on social media, of people that she didn't want at her funeral. Some Mandela people, some Madikizela people, which means she didn't have a good relationship with these people. But she was getting buried, and it would also be nice to know who okayed and confirmed that she must get buried next to her grandmother, Winnie Mandela. Oh, I think Uzinzi, her mother is buried next to Winnie. So Winnie Mandela, we lost Uzinzi Mandela last year, if I'm not mistaken. She was an ambassador to one of the countries. She'd been a great activist. I mean, there's still iconic pictures of her holding up her fist, standing in solidarity with her mother and her incarcerated father, Nelson Mandela. Zoleka Mandela, as I said, had a very roller coaster, tragic life, which ended in cancer. And she lost 2 children, one of them to a car accident, Zenani. And now we've got this drama. I'm making this video, number one, to highlight that, guys, all our families have problems. We make these assumptions, especially those of us who are ambitious, some people who may be famous, some people who may be rich, connected. We have these assumptions that our children will automatically be okay. Our grandchildren will be automatically okay. Outside of Nelson Mandela, outside of Winnie Madikizela, it is very difficult for me to actually figure out which of the other legacy kids have actually gone on to do something amazing. Mandela has done well to give some dignity to the family. I actually studied with him and I got to befriend him at Rhodes University in Makanda back in the day. So he's done very well to keep the stature of the family, and he's got great presence, and good wisdom as well. But there have been stories of some of the descendants caught shoplifting, Obviously, we've had some of these issues, struggling with addictions and the like. And it's been tragic. Part of it could be the trauma of, my grandfather was arrested for so long, and the whole world has got these weird expectations of us. It's something for us to consider, especially people who are coming from a village, a township, and who are now living in the suburbs and making good money. There are so many things we are doing wrong in raising our children, especially stealing away their struggle, allowing them to actually be strong and build character. And sometimes some of these children get spoiled because they're like, well, my mom, my dad, they've got money, we're rich, we're famous. And we miss out on proper development and sometimes maybe therapy. Maybe the family of a Nelson Mandela must constantly go for regular, quarterly family gatherings where the grandfather speaks, the grandmother speaks, and other people speak about the things that they went through and what is important for the children to be of sound mind, to lead decent lives, and to avoid mistakes of, this is not you. You aren't the billionaire. You aren't the super famous politician. This is your grandmother. This is your grandfather. This is your father. You must create your own legacy and you must put in work. So I can only imagine how many other families have gone through so much drama and are still going to go through drama as well. I remember having a very privileged conversation with Zane Zuma in Durban, and he was just saying, because I was asking him, how's the family? How are things? And he's like, bro, my family's like any other family. We've got our own problems. We've got our own politics. And even with the old man, there are issues here and there. And you're like, And you can imagine, his father's a polygamist. He's got multiple wives, lots of kids. If ever, when he passes on, who knows if there might be any drama there. Fighting over the estate and who's the closer child, who's the closer grand. These things normally happen with icons. It is what it is. I mean, there was controversy now with the death of Umangosuthu Teles, with his legacy and the people that died linked to the Inkatha Freedom Party. Some of his squabbles with the current Zulu king, Misu Zulu, etc. Like, we are normal human beings. Being famous, being rich, being successful, being a politician, being a musician. The late Mendoza. Like, so many issues out there. And it's just a moment to reflect, not just on the Mandela family, but our own families. I mean, I look at my family split. My father's side, Gwamlochwa, and my mother's side, Gwamyaga. The issues that are there. Luckily with my father, there was minimal drama, but my father had a lot of kids as well. And luckily, I managed, with the help of my mom, my brother, my sister, and my father's children, to make sure that it was a very decent and noble send-off. And thanks to my uncles, my father's brothers, and his sisters, we had an amazing send-off for my dad. But not all families have those privileges, especially because my dad was a very controversial figure. My grandmother on my mother's side, my mother's mother, she might pass on one day, and there will be children left over, and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. What happens there to her house? Where do people go live? And like, there is so much drama. Then you think of things like life insurance payouts. Who's going to bury who where? Who's paying for what? Who is inheriting the family house? Becomes an issue. And do you guys have plans? What was Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's wishes when she passed? Who were the 4 holes that she bought at the Fourways burial site? Who were they for? Were they for herself and her 2 daughters, Uzinzi no Zenani? Of which maybe Zenani then is in her right to be like, but this grave is not for you, Siswami, or Nganya Siswami, Zoleka. This is not yours. This is for me. Out of respect, I'm not trying to disrespect you, but my mother's last will and testament wanted me to be buried next to her. That's the one part. Then we have to speak about the fact that Mandela has built a very big legacy and a big name, and all his children, all his grandchildren, all his great-grandchildren have taken his surname, even at times where the girls get married into other families. And people ask, but why did Zoleka take her grandfather's surname? Why are these grandchildren taking the great-grandfather's surname? It's because the family carries weight. It becomes so much easier. It's social capital for these kids, grandkids, to get into certain prestigious schools, for them to get into certain prestigious clubs, for them to travel very comfortably abroad. It's like, I am the grandchild or the great-grandchild of the late great Utata Nelson Mandela. Your father, though, is a Dlamini. Your father is a Bashala. Your father is a Mlojwa. And you're like, no, but on my mother's side, come on. We are carrying heavy weight. My father's surname does nothing for me. What does this say for culture now, for people that are cultural? Does it make sense culturally to say we will align with the surname that makes the most sense to move us forward? And how does the father or grandfather of that child who is not a Mandela feel? What are the conversations around that? You guys happily handed over your daughter to another family. You had a ceremony of the handing over. Ilobolo was paid. Umshado, umabo, umembeso was all practiced. But now still this daughter belongs to this side of the family. Who were meant to hand you over? And people are rightfully asking if Zenani Mandela is saying Zoleka can't be buried there, arguably because she is married somewhere else, then why must Zoleka's child, Zenani, be buried there? Zenani herself, the aunt, what right does she have kwa Mandela if she has been handed over to another family, Wadlamini? Who are the men? Because culture, as far as we know, is patriarchal in that type of practice. Where are the men to come and say, let's say Amandla Mandela, to say, no, this is how things will be done. I will ensure that everything is solid. Instead of what we see now, which is very sad and very triggering. You can imagine for the remaining children and for other people that were close to Zoleka and people that also are just part of the family to be like, yo, this is so embarrassing and shameful for the family. Do these cultural practices still make sense? What does it mean when a woman has been handed over to another family? Did Winnie remain a Mandela forever culturally? Because there's no real thing as divorce. Because she didn't remarry. There is no other man who came and paid Nelson Ilobolo to be like, I'd like to marry Winnie and take her as my wife and maybe even take your children as my children. There are so many people that don't know cultural prescriptions. And the custodians of our cultures, the Zulus, the Xhosas, the Ndebeles, whoever, they are not doing a good job of documenting in written and video and audio format, saying, guys, this is how culture follows, and then have the questions asked. What if I marry a single mother who has a child? Do I take the child as mine? Does the child stay with the father? Does the child stay with the mother's family? Does the child take my surname? Is there a process there? Whose surname must a person take? How do surnames work? We have Ushaga Ilembe now, the series where we speak about Ushaga kasenza ngakhona, usenza ngakhona kajana. We have the current king of the Zulus, UmiSuZulu kaZwelithini. Africans, as far as I know and have been taught, did not have surnames as prescribed currently. Your surname would be, or rather your lineage and umlando wagini would be based on your father's name and his father's name in that manner. Because they would be the people that are seen as the head of the area. It's almost like I am Penal of the land of Cyril Ramaphosa. I am Penal of the land of UmiSuZulu kaZwelithini. I am Penal, the son of Uzwelake Kamsongelo. That is how it would be passed down. But today we have this thing because of colonialism and IDs where we have to put a surname. And it's caused such a huge storm because when you look at shows like Utatako, Khumbule Ekhaya, these paternity test shows, you realize a lot of children are carrying surnames that are not theirs, meaning the mother lied about paternity. So where UmiSuZulu is saying UmiSuZulu kaZwelithini, you find that maybe the mom actually didn't have a child with Uzwelithini, had a child with Umangosuthu. So he's meant to be UmiSuZulu kaMangosuthu, and you're like, we've lost that ancestral line. Then there's issues where a child was adopted into Umlotshwa, but through blood relation, the child is not Umlotshwa because I married the mom came with the child, and then I formally adopted the child. What does it mean ulobola ingane? It's almost a form of adoption. As I go marry a woman, with the help of my family and my elders, we go and we adopt a girl from her family into our family. Which is why even if I pass on, even if we no longer get along, this woman remains a woman wakamlotshwa. And she will be treated here. And the only time she will ever leave is if another man somewhere comes azomlobola from us to marry her somewhere else, or her own family comes to lobola her back for whatever reason. But we've lost these things and we don't really know what they are. And even some people might even argue, no, then there's damages in Tlhaolo. When do you pay damages for a woman? In the modern era where women are empowered, women are free, a girl goes and freely, because she has agency over her body legally in the modern world, she freely goes and has sex with whoever she wants. Because it's her body, her choice. she can abort if she falls pregnant and doesn't have a child. She might have a miscarriage. And then she meets a guy, they decide to have a child mutually. And after falling pregnant, the guy gets punished and gets told, you must pay damages to cleanse our home of this filth that you have brought here, impregnating a woman you have not married. And the guy has no recourse to say, but your daughter's been sleeping with so many other people. Your daughter has had an abortion, has had miscarriages. Your daughter is empowered. She has agency over her life. But no, I must pay damages. If I don't pay damages, this child will not be recognized by my ancestors. I can't have imbelego, which is me introducing my child to my ancestors. Then there's people that say, just because you've paid a goat to cleanse the house, etc., you've cleansed the moms, now you must still lobola the child so that the child can take your surname. Why is the child taking your surname? Because culturally, mauyo loboli ingane, even if I don't want to be with the mother, ingane I must take to my family without the mother so that azokhuliswa kwamlotshwa abe umlotshwa. But we don't understand these nuances, and they act out in some of these things that happen where there's squabbles. But my ex-husband bought, but I'm not married anymore. What does that mean culturally? Did the family ever officially hand her back to Mandela? Did they hand her back so that we know, no man, officially she's no longer married? And even there were even cultural practices that were followed there where there was cleansing, she is now back in the home, etc. What has happened with all her children and all the other baby daddies as well? What processes were followed there? Black Africans want to selectively pick and choose how they want to practice culture. And because of that, it clashes. And there are so many fights that could be avoided. If people would look, we will follow culture to the T. We will go and consult and find out exactly how we're meant to follow this thing and respect it. And when I meet a woman, I explain to her, this is how my family does things. And she explains to me, this is how my family does things. And we say, look, please call your elders. Let me call my elders. And let's just confirm that this is how things are done before I sleep with you, before we have a child. But this is for cultural people, of which I am not. I am not cultural. I understand culture because I've researched it. I've practiced it as well. And I can explain to people. I may have left the Zulu nation, but I can explain that what they are doing is wrong. And then they are allowed to explain that from my family side, this is how we do it, and it's different from the norm, because there is general cultural practice and custom. Then there are specific families who are like, we don't slaughter goats, we slaughter sheep. We do not slaughter sheep, we slaughter cows. We do not slaughter cows, we slaughter chickens, and we can explain why. This is how we deal with Intlawulo. This is how we deal with Ilobolo. This is how we deal with it. And you explain these things so there aren't unnecessary clashes. Zoleka has been sick for a while. This is not meant to be a surprise where she was going to get buried. She's from a very known family. There were meant to be no surprises. And yet here we are. And a lot of these things have happened in your families and will continue happening in your families because you guys are not having these uncomfortable but very, very important conversations. What happens when one of us passes on? What are the right practices to follow? If I'm religious, it is straightforward. Christianity, Islam, they have prescriptions. Why are you doing weird things if you've been going to the church and praying? You are a God-fearing woman. You are a prayer warrior. And now all of a sudden things are being slaughtered. But that was not your belief system. You are meant to be buried through the church with your pastor and your preacher and then follow whatever. If you're not cultural, if you're not religious, there is a legal process of how you get buried. But we are not having these important conversations. And these are the things that are destroying society and not allowing, especially Black Africans, to prosper forward because there is no clarity just in the way we live, in the way we die, in the way we come together as families, in the way we build relationships with families, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a marriage, whether it's dating, whether it's through a child. And you sit and you have these uncomfortable conversations. Yes, we are not old school. Yes, these are not traditional times. But the families have to sit together. If not the families, the stakeholders. Myself, my brother, my best friend, any woman that is involved, maybe her friends, maybe her aunt, whoever is a stakeholder in our lives, people that will have to look after our kids if we pass on, people that will have to bury us, people that are aware of our life insurance policies, people that are aware of any will we may have. They must sit together and be like, friend, let us sit with this person and have a very uncomfortable conversation around what happens if you guys pass on to these children. What happens if you guys pass on? Who gets buried? Who gets cremated? Where will you get buried? No, I want to be buried near my mother. You cannot. You have been married into another family. You will be buried next to your husband. No, but I don't want. then we need to discuss what exactly happened in the cultural practices that led to our marriage. We need to maybe go and fix some of those things. And I think your family maybe has to pay certain penalties to ensure that you get buried with them. Let us have these conversations. What is the role of surnames today? What is the role of a surname besides being put on home affairs? Do you need a surname so that the father is aware that this is my child? And if the child doesn't have his surname, he says, I will not maintain. Because this girl's going to go out in the streets and go tell 5 other niggas that this is your child and lie. And one day we'll go to Utataku. And one day there'll be a fight in maintenance court. And blood tests will be required. And it will come out that this is not your child. What is the purpose of a surname? And why must the surname be some old man we don't know? Who is Umlojo? Who is Mandela? Who is Udlamini? Who is whoever? We don't know anymore. We just hold on to these things and we fight and we squabble and we hate each other and we beef and our children feel lost and all of a sudden they have a calling. They must have all these slaughterings and burning him because we are holding on to something we do not even understand. What is the purpose of a surname today? Do we even know our clan names and our lineage and our heritage? At which point will we maybe adopt it? What does it mean to be part of the Zulu nation? To be part of the Venda nation? How does it affect your soul and your spirit and your lived reality? How do you wake up every day and walk? How do you approach a woman or a man? How do you approach friendships? Do we need to change some of these practices? And formally, we are creating podcasts today. We are authors today. We speak on podiums globally. And that person with the PhD, who's a professor, who has authored 5 books, who has spoken on so many platforms, who's a celebrity, when you ask them, where do you come from? Who are you? They cannot give you clarity. This is my father and his lineage. This is my mother and their lineage. This is who I am. This is my belief system. I pray I go to church to respect this side, but I also practice these things too. And this is how my children work. And this is the relationship I have with the mother or the father of my children. This is how we practice every day. This is how we dress. This is how we eat. This is what we pray to, meditate to, burn incense to, slaughter for. I am very rooted in who I am. They have all the qualifications and they've written thesis upon thesis, but they cannot tell you their lineage. When you ask them about ilobolo, nenhlawulo, imbuzi, inkomo, asinawo umhlaba, lento yenziwa kanjani, but you've got an English name, but you studied, they cannot answer you. Because they themselves are lost. We've got Muslims that have madrasa where Muslim children of the Islamic faith are taught on a regular basis Arabic, what is in the Quran, and they learn how to carry themselves as a Muslim person. Jewish kids go to school on weekends where they learn from the Torah and they learn how to carry themselves as Jewish children. There are traditional Zulu people, the girls, Abayo Hlolo, that get inspected for virginity, who are taught and belong to a club of Izintombi, Amachichi, where they are taught how to carry themselves without going to finishing school. That becomes the finishing school, where they learn how to carry themselves as young maidens. When you get married, this is what will be expected of you as a wife from your husband's family, etc. Xhosa men, some of them still go to Entabeni, Ugoluga, to go and get circumcised and learn how to carry themselves as men out there. But for the vast majority of us, we are lost. Pen, what happens when I have a child? If I get a girl pregnant, should I be sleeping with a woman? Should she be sleeping with me? Should we inform our parents that we've had sex? Should we slaughter here? And then the inyongo spilt and the blood, and we just hold up. We don't know what, it's a mess. And we wonder why our lives are not going forward. We can scrap so many old things because we have decided these things no longer apply because we live in a different world. Our forefathers, our ancestors, we will have a huge ceremony to thank them for bringing us to this point, and we will ask them in earnest and explain to them why we would like to stop certain practices. And maybe ask for deliverance from them to say we are now leaving this and we are maybe going to Christianity or Buddhism or Judaism or Rastafarianism, and allow that ceremony and document it and say this is where our family transitioned. I think the Oppenheimers in South Africa, from Ernest Oppenheimer to Harry to now Nikki and Jonathan, I believe they came in as Jewish people and today they have become Anglican. They went through a process. You go through that process and you say, look, we used to be these people and it's been documented and this is how we transitioned. And you let your children, grandchildren understand the history, and they can choose at any given time to go back, to hold on to what you have, or to move on to something else. This is how we kept surnames or our lineage and where we come from, our legacy. And this is how we document it today. And we went from surnames to maybe today we use numbers. My great-great-grandfather is number 300. I'm number 4052. And you document it in a number. And maybe you document it in something else, in a book, in a video. Anyway, it's very, very sad and I think very teachable moment for all of us. May the Zoleka Mandela rest in peace. May her story be in all its various shades, from the cancer to losing a child, to the drug and alcohol addiction, to having different children with different fathers, to being married and divorced, to what's happened now with the burial. Zenani Mandela as well, may she also have peace in what she's done with the court interdict and the police and the moving of the body. May Mandela rise higher and help to lead and galvanize the family, and not just him, but every young descendant. Doesn't need to be male. It's another conversation we need to have. There are so many families out there who have lost direction, and it's because all the men in the family are weak and the women are strong, but people keep reminding them, you are just a woman. You cannot say anything. No. We've got Umkabai, Kajama. We have got Orachadi. We have had so many powerful women. Herself, Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, Umama of the nation, who has been honored with a street named after her. These are strong women, Charlotte Maxeke, that we've lived with to this day. In the modern era, we've got women like Oprah Winfrey, so strong, Lauryn Hill, Erykah Badu. These are wise women. And arguably, historically, the women in Africa, we were a matriarchal society and the woman had a very strong role to play. The man would be the head of the land, but the woman would be the rightful owner of the land. And she would work and till the land, and the man would make sure that the land is rich with livestock and it is protected by himself and his sons. And arguably, men today are meant to work for women. We go and we answer the door when someone knocks. We go and we drive the woman when she needs to be taken somewhere. When she's in trouble, we protect her. We go out and work and provide so that she can cook and nurture and make sure that we're clean and the household is warm. We have lost these things because we do not want to have these conversations. Is marriage applicable today? What does it mean when you have more than one child? Is this tembu applicable today? Whose surname should the child take? Should the child take a surname? Do we want to rework what surnames are post-colonialism because we claim we are decolonizing? Why is the mother not recognized? We've got birth certificates beautifully today that capture the name of the mother and the father, the unabridged birth certificate. But what does this mean moving forward, and why does it even matter? Is it just a matter of getting the SASSA grant, etc., etc., etc.? Let's have the tough conversations. I'm constantly having panel power talks around the country where I want to gather with you guys and I want us to have these conversations. And I'm going to be making sure that I spend more time with you. And we're going to structure our days. When I'm in Durban, when I'm in Cape Town, if I go to Emonti, if I go to Eqabeja, if in Mbombela, if in Bloemfontein, Mangaung, let's sit. Let's have these conversations and let's sit. For these 2 hours, we will discuss family. For these 2 hours, we will discuss politics. For these 2 hours, let's discuss money and business. And let us have food, and let us eat, and let us have it in an African comfortable space where I am the leader and the mediator and the person speaking, but everyone gets a chance to add their thoughts where they disagree with respect, and let us build. I am building my belief system of penalism, but I respect that other people have their own belief systems, and they want to clarify those belief systems so that those belief systems work for them and allow them to thrive and are not impoverishing them and making them take out loans from banks and buy cows from strange white people that are not even part of your culture. And you go to Indian and Chinese shops to go and buy manufactured in China clothing that is meant to be cultural because you've lost your way. You need to find your way so that your family can thrive moving forward because you did this very, very difficult work. Ipen elimnyama, usiba ulunsundu, pen you all the swart pen. This is Sondagochtend, Sunday morning, and I hope you guys will have a great and blessed day. Pen you all the black pen. Cheers.